The part I love the most is like you have all these people online, like they believe in these, like the global agenda, which I do believe in, right? And they say, well, those buildings that came down on 9/11, I was in those buildings. We spoke about this. I know you've interviewed so many people, but if you go back to the previous 2 episodes, I think even the first one, I discussed how I was there that day underneath the building when it got knocked down, right? So it's not like I didn't experience this.
What were you doing there?
I was going to school, bro. Second year, sophomore year, I'm going to Pace University. Doors open, people screaming, yelling. I'm like, what the? I didn't know what was. I didn't even know the building's on fire above us. It was crazy. But I love how people go, I know that it was the Muslims didn't do it. They just blamed them to start war. Because there's a lot of people that believe that, right? I'm talking about.
What do they believe?
They believe
you're going really fast.
They
right
believe
now.
that those buildings were taken down to false flag and take, to do what they've done in the Middle East over the last 25 years.
Right.
There's large swaths of people that believe that.
Right.
Okay, I'm not even getting into that. But I'm talking about even non-Christians. What I find it funny is if you believe that that was a false flag and that those were destroyed by anyone else except the guy with the long beard who miraculously flew 2 jumbo jets into this building and they miraculously found the passport on the floor and they miraculously killed him and then dumped his body because they didn't want to give the American people the right.
Right.
I, as someone that was in the World Trade Center, I want to see his body. I deserve that justice.
Did you? I just saw this recently. I read something.
They just threw his body over. No pictures, no nothing. Come on, man.
Did you read the story about, and Steve, you're going to have to look this up to find the article, but there was a story that he was flown to Saudi Arabia by the CIA.
Fahrenheit 9/11, the doc had covered some of that.
He went to a hospital because he had some sort of like a thing with his liver or his pancreas.
Diabetes. No, he had diabetes.
Something was going on with him medically where he had an emergency procedure done in Saudi Arabia in a hospital. And this was like a year before 9/11. And he went to the hospital and he was being supervised there by like CIA people.
He definitely existed. I'm not denying his existence. He was a real person.
Who? Osama?
Bin Laden, yeah.
Oh.
There's people that think he's just a boogeyman. No, he existed. I just don't know if he was really alive. How do we really know, bro? I wanted to see his body.
Yeah.
I think the American people deserve to see his body. As a 9/11 survivor, and I hate to use that word, but as someone that was underneath those buildings that day and watched people die right in front, I thought hundreds of thousands of people were dead that day. I mean, I cried.
You were there right under the tower before
I was
it collapsed?
on the E train. Last stop is World Trade. I'm underneath it, man. I'm in the sub-levels coming up. I was probably on the last subway that ever went into the World Trade Center, ever. I actually have a clip of that on my it's a reel I have right now on my Instagram.
Steve, did you find anything on that Bin Laden hospital visit?
But what I'm saying is, getting back to the original point, is if you believe that that was a false flag and all that, and that they weren't really responsible for it, then why do you hate Muslims so much? That group of people. I'm not saying all that believe that.
Right.
I find it to be a contradiction. If you feel that they use that as an excuse, then why so much animosity? Because there's a lot of people that believe that we don't know the truth about that day. And yes, we're off a tangent here, but that's what happens when we're together.
All right, here's the article that I was alluding to with Bin Laden. CIA agent alleged to have met Bin Laden in July. French report claims terrorist leader stayed in Dubai hospital. 2 months before September 11th, Osama Bin Laden flew to Dubai for 10 days for treatment at an American hospital where he was visited by a local CIA agent, according to a French newspaper, Le Figaro. The disclosures are known to come from French intelligence, which is keen to reveal the ambitious role of CIA and to restrain Washington from extending the war to Iraq and elsewhere. Bin Laden is reported to have arrived in Dubai on July 4th from Quetta in Pakistan with his own personal doctor, nurse, and 4 bodyguards to be treated in the urology department. While there, he was visited by several members of his family and Saudi personalities and CIA. The CIA chief was seen in the lift on his way to see Bin Laden, and later, it is alleged, boasted to friends about his contact. He was recalled to Washington soon afterwards. How fucking
And now
crazy.
he's probably in a ditch at the bottom of the Baltimore River.
This was posted by Anthony Sampson in The Guardian on Wednesday, October 31st, 2001.
Brother, there's just so much shady stuff going on, man. I'm trying to stop World War III from
Keep
breaking
going down?
out. Okay, maybe it already started.
This is fucking insane. So how do you explain that? How was he in an American hospital 2 months before 9/11 with CIA people there?
I'm not killing myself. I'm not suicidal. Say it for the record. Say it for the record, Danny Jones.
Beck Glover's not suicidal.
No, say it for yourself, too.
I'm not suicidal.
Yo, no
Far
matter
from
what,
it.
I don't give a fuck what they show you ever, because I just explained why you can't. If you do, you're in trouble. So, how do you explain it, bro? Times don't match up. Story doesn't match up. You don't show me the guy's body. Okay, and I didn't. This is not what this episode was about, but that's why you watch the Danny Jones podcast. You never know which way it's gonna go. Danny, I am trying to reverse some of the damage that was created because of that day, because of that conflict, because of where it led. There's millions of people dead because of that day, man.
Are you familiar with like the history of Syria and Iran and how the idea of suicide bombers was started? Like it was called
loosely, but you have different sects, right?
the poor man's nuke, I think is what they called it. It was
They gave them keys. You're gonna get these.
Bashar al-Assad's father was the one who, when I think the Reagan administration went into Syria during his administration, they wanted to try to find a way to push back the Americans, and then I think Assad went to Iran, and they met and they talked about this idea. That's where the whoever the leader of Iran was at the time.
It was probably his father, Bashar's father, probably.
No, but yeah, Bashar's father went to Iran to meet with whoever the head of Iran was at that time. That's where they
It was Khomeini, man, no? 89?
Yes, I think so.
80-ish.
I think you're right,
It
yeah.
had to have been Khomeini.
That's when they came up with the idea of
Because I know Reagan was in power when the hostages were being held, right? And he
Right,
got them
right,
released. Like, he's like, either you release these hostages or we're going to nuke you, or basically. And they
right.
released them right away under Reagan.
And then that's when they first started using suicide bombers.
It was not a concept of Islam.
And that's
like
how
originally.
right, understood. But that's when it first developed. And they started using that against the Americans in Syria. And then eventually Reagan pulled everybody out. They pulled all the Americans out because they didn't know how to deal with this.
But let's give
with
credit
this-
to the Japanese first with their kamikazes. They're the first true kamikazers.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
There's even a famous Albanian man who technically did that, but he didn't do a suicide bombing. He lured he's one of the most gangster people you ever read about in your life. Pull up. This is the most gangster. Is that just you can't classify as a suicide bomber, but it's a guy that basically, which is still forbidden in Islam. I think I've explained this in episodes.
Well, here's
before.
the thing.
You
Here's
can
what
never, under any circumstance in Islam, commit suicide, even if you know you're going to die.
Right. What I'm getting at is the creation of suicide bombing
Started in that time period,
in the
yeah.
Islamic world.
Was in that time. Between Iraq and Iran also. Those
Yes.
wars is when it really started.
That's when it
And
created a different version of Islam, where somebody in Egypt, I can't remember the name of it, who it was now. Wahhabi?
I don't know if the Wahhabis were the ones, but to my understanding, Wahhabi movement was to create a version of Islam that has no mercy.
Yes.
And when the whole faith is about mercy.
Right.
It really is.
Right.
The first converts to Islam were really, literally prisoners of war. Mm-hmm. Okay? The prisoners of war are treated in such a fashion that they were like, this is how you treat your prisoners of war. We want to be like you guys. So they would convert because they're like, this is how you treat your prisoners. Now, you look at what they did over the last 20 years. They're chopping people's heads off in orange jumpsuits and filming
Right.
it with camcorders. Like,
Right.
this is not Islam.
Right.
To anyone that studies the religion. My whole point on this episode is, why are we not given the same respect? And why is there double standards? You want to accuse the prophet about being a pedo. What about all the scandals in the church? What about all the scandals in the church?
This
brother?
Wahhabism is like a
Swept under the
bastardized
rug.
version of
Swept under the rug. One of the largest denominations of Christianity, Catholicism, swept under the fucking rug in our time.
Yeah.
Forget 600 when
Yeah.
right now in our time.
Yeah, they're paying giant settlements. to keep these
Thousands
people
and
silent.
thousands and thousands of victims across the globe in every nation. You want to talk about a scandal? So then you as a Christian or a Catholic, you really have the audacity to point fingers and say he was a pedo. Yo, look in the mirror. Look in the fucking mirror and be real.